Welcome to Mechanic. Today we're going to talk about what are the symptoms of a bad fuse box. So right here we have a fuse box from a Mercedes, and we're going to talk about the symptoms of this and maybe how you can troubleshoot one. So these fuse boxes these days, they used to be very simple. Like in this car, this fuse box right here, it's a pretty simple one. All it has is fuses. But if you look at this one, goes in the engine bay. This is not doesn't just have fuses, it has relays, it also has a computer as well. So a lot of communication with the different parts of the car is done through this. And sometimes I'll have also a similar fuse box on the back. And this is not just for Mercedes. Sure, this is a 10-year-old Mercedes, but newer vehicles are kind of the same way. They don't have just simple fuse boxes. It's pretty complicated fuse box with also a module in it that a lot of sensors communicate through it. So in this case, in this car, we have a bad rear fuse box. Now Mercedes calls this a signal acquisition module. So the rear one is called rear SAM, and the front one is called, it's in the engine bay, it's called front SAM, but it's basically the fuse box with a module on the bottom, and that's what Mercedes called it, a SAM, front SAM, rear SAM. The rear SAM is bad. Now BMW calls them something different, Volvo calls them different names, so it's you're gonna have to do your research and see what that particular make is calling these basically a control module with the fuses that control the car. In this case, the back one is bad. So the symptoms we have here is we have a parking brakes doesn't work because communication goes through the rear fuse box to the parking brake, so that doesn't work. Fuel gauge doesn't work. Fuel pump is not working correctly. It just primes when you first start the engine, but then it shuts off. We have backup camera doesn't work. So the rear end of this car, all the lights here do not work. Parking sensors don't work. Everything that goes through that rear fuse box in this car is not working. This car actually will drive, but you have half of it not working because everything that's going through that rear fuse box is not working. Now the thing with fuse boxes, or if it was the front one, it connects to the engine control unit, and if that was faulty, then the car most likely would not have started. But because this is control the back end of the car is starting, but you have these issues with like parking brake not working, or fuel pump not running properly, car loses power, airbag lights are on for the rear airbags, and the rear seats. So one way that you can confirm, or one way that you will notice issues with the fuse box, is that when you use a scanner like this, when you go to that module, here, as we said earlier, it's called signal acquisition module. So you have driver's side, so that's the front SAM, and then we have the rear SAM. When we try to communicate with it, we get no communication because that module is completely shut down. It's not getting power. Another thing that you'll notice is that if you run a scan, not only is the scan going to take longer, some modules that are on the car, they're just going to get skipped because the car is not able to communicate with them. And you're going to have fault codes, a lot of fault codes in that scanner that's saying that cannot communicate with the sensor, or cannot communicate with rear airbags, and so on. Like, you have a ton of codes that are current. I'm not talking about store code, because as this car sit a long time and the codes never get clear, sometimes you will have a lot of codes, but they're usually say stored on the status there. But if you see codes that are current, then you can very well suspect that you might have a bad fuse box. And sometimes what's even worse is that sometimes the fuse box could be bad, can have water damage. Is very common. This one actually did have some water damage, and it will some functions will work and some will not work. When you communicate with the SAM, there's no codes in the SAM at all. Not always, but sometimes you might not have any codes at all on the when you connect to that fuse box. But you'll notice a lot of other modules, they're saying, hey, I cannot, complaining that they can't communicate with so many sensors on the vehicle. So that's how another way that you know that you might have a bad fuse box. And if you are, like in this case, we don't, everything that's on the rear SAM is not working. One way that you can confirm is that you look at the fuse chart for that fuse box, and you'll see like, wait a second, everything that's in this list, everything is not working. So that's one way. You just like, or I probably have a bad fuse box or not getting power to it. In this case, we're not getting power to it. It's another thing you can do is find where the power, the harness. In this case right here, you can see you have all these connectors. They're for different sensors, but you can see these two big connectors here. Those are the power. We recommend getting the wiring harness and then confirming wiring diagram, confirming where the power is supposed to come in the module, and confirm that you're actually getting power. But sometimes you might get power, but half of it is not working because of water damage, which is pretty common, not on Mercedes and a lot of cars. These modules can get easily damaged by water, even condensation sometimes. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. You can be the mechanic.